Go ahead, Manuel.
Hey guys, it's Garrett here.
You spend more time laughing than you actually do. All right. Okay, so like I said, Christian actually did it right. He said, you know what? Come on. All right, so now.
What are they supposed to say?
Huh? Okay, you know like the intro to like all YouTube videos that actually have like some like, you know, yeah, something like that. Okay, so it was funny. If you watch the one from, the last one I did, you know, Christian actually did that one. It was actually pretty funny. He said everyone was like a lazy A for not coming to class. And then, anyway. All right, okay, so now, this is going to be the next part of our notes, which is going to be vertical translation. So now, we have everything, almost everything we need for this. Okay, so we're going to now move the whole graph up and down. That's what this is. We're moving the whole graph up and down. Okay, so I know everyone's going to have their notes out right now. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So now, if you notice, it's going to be whatever my C value is, like this from my equation. So it's either going to move the whole thing up or the whole thing down. So if it's positive, it goes up. If it's negative, it goes down. Thank you. And so we have the amplitude, which is on top of that. So our amplitude tells me how high up it goes, the wave, and how low it goes, the wave part, right? But now we're shifting the whole thing up or down. So this one is actually, it is rotating around. Instead of rotating around the x-axis, it's now going to be rotating around whatever my C value is here. Make sense? It'll make more sense here in a little bit. Okay, so everything else is the same though. Everything else is the same. So if we go through and actually do everything, so step one, I would do what? Find period. Okay, so period, let's do that one. Period. What is my period? I heard it. It's 2 pi over 3. So that's just 2 pi over 3, right? Okay, what's the next thing I find? Amplitude. You got it the other day. Okay, so now, the coefficient of the variable. The number in front of the variable, because this always starts with, remember my period is always 2 pi over b, where b, with the blue background, it doesn't come out very well, where the b value is the number in front of my variable. Right? The number in front of my variable is 3, so it's going to be 2 pi over 3 here. And that's where I get that from. So I have that piece. I have this, so it doesn't reduce, so it stays what it is. Are we okay there? Amplitude is the number in front of cosine or sine. So this one's going to be what? -2. It's the whole thing, include the sine. So it's going to be -2. Okay? So now, the next thing I'm going to have to find, I'm picking this out, is going to be my, so, do I have a phase shift here? I heard it. No, there is no phase shift. There is not something inside with this where it's actually going to be moving it left and right. Because I always get the parentheses and I have some other number in there, right? That's going to be my phase shift. Inside the parentheses is my phase shift. That is my argument. So I have no phase shift. So this is none. Now, VS, my vertical shift. Vertical shift is 3. This other number over here. Okay, this other number right here. So this one's going to be 3. So if I go back to my format of my formula, like it is right here, it was like the C value this other thing. So that one's going to be, so my vertical shift is 3. So this has to do with my Y values. It doesn't have to do with my X's. So it doesn't change anything I do with these things. I do my period, I do my amplitude. Now, do I need to factor out anything here? No, because I don't have a phase shift, so I don't have to do the factoring. So now I do my parts. This is 2 periods, right?
Yeah.
So I have to do 2 periods out of that. So let's go ahead and start it. So I'm going to do my first. So 0, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1. Right?
This is over 2 periods.
2 periods, right? So I'm not going to try and cram it. I think I have another slide that's linked for this one. Yes. So I have another slide for this one. So I could actually include and do all my second period. This is all my first period. My second period is going to be the next page. All right. So what am I multiply this by? 2 pi, right? 2 pi over 3. Because that's my period, right? Okay, do that. All my parts. Okay. What symbol always goes next? I heard it. Minus sign. It's always a minus sign. So, it'd be a minus. What is my phase shift?
0.
0. So do I need to actually write that for all these?
Yeah.
No, I actually don't. For this one, I don't. Okay, I don't have a phase shift here, so it'd be a minus 0 because there is no phase shift. So I'm just showing you right now. So it's the same thing I would actually always do, but this one has no phase shift. So I don't actually have to include anything here. Right? So it's just going to be these pieces here. Make sense? Okay, so do my math. So this is going to be in vain 0. Next one. 2 pi over 12, which is pi over 6. This is going to give me pi over 3. That was 2 pi over 6. The next one's going to be
6 pi over 12.
6 pi over 12, which is very good. Pi over 2, which is 1/2, right? And then my next one's going to be 2 pi over 3. Okay. Actually, I think I have enough room to actually do the other parts here. I'll just do my graph on my other side. So my next one's going to be 4. 5/4. Why did I? The dyslexia is strong today. All right. So what did I say? 5 pi over 4. So 5 over 4, 6 over 4, 7 over 4, and 8 over 4. So multiply by my period, which is 2 pi over 3. All right? Jess.
Yeah, sure.
Every time he says something, he can't even say the whole thing without start laughing. All right, so do my math right here. I end up with 5 pi over
6.
I'm hoping it's not going to stop working. It's lagging on me right now. All right, so what did I say? 5 pi over 6.
Haven't heard that one in years.
Lag.
That's just pi.
This one's just going to be pi over 1, right? Or just pi. Next one's going to be 7 pi over 6. 4 pi over
3.
There we go. Okay, you have all those written down, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to do the graph on the next page then.
I need help with the graph. It's confusing.
Okay, so let's take a look. So now, I'm going to start this. I'm going to start this one right here with my vertical shift. Okay, so I'm going to start my graph with my vertical shift. So my vertical shift is what? 3. So it's 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to draw a dotted line all the way there. What's my amplitude?
Negative 2.
-2, right? So that means how high does this one go? If I'm starting here, it has to go up how much? It goes up to 5, right? It goes up 2 from here. Because my amplitude is how much it goes up. My vertical shift moves the whole thing. So now it goes up 2, so it goes up to 5, and it goes down to?
Negative 1.
It goes down to 1. Very good. Because I'm starting here now. I'm not using the x-axis anymore. Now, with my vertical shift, I'm using this. This is going to be my new 0 line. When I would do my graphs and I would say, hey, it's at 0. Now it's going to go to there. Yes?
So, writing all the points on that line.
Yes.
Oh, so you just forget about the x-axis?
Yes. It's no longer on the x-axis. That's what the vertical shift does. It moves up or down. So I'm still going to have my point. So I have my 0.
Does it move any more? Besides those two?
Okay. So I equally divided out my pieces. So now, so I start with 0, right? 0 was my start. What was my next one? Pi over 6. What's my next one?
Pi over 3.
Next one?
Pi over 2. 2 pi over 3.
2 pi over 3. Next?
Pi over 5 pi over 6.
5 pi over 6.
Pi.
Pi.
7 pi over 6.
10 pi.
4 pi over 3.
Okay, so I have everything labeled now. Okay, I still have my parts right here that are on my x-axis. So I have those labeled and everything is here. So now, let's go ahead and fill in my pieces. So I'm starting off with a cosine, right?
Yes. 1.
Cosine is normally supposed to start at 1, but my amplitude is -2, right? So now, if this was cosine, just regular cosine by itself, it would start at 1 plus whatever my phase shift is. But since this one right here, now what I have is I'm starting at 3, but since it's a negative, right? -2, it's going to start at 1. So it's starting in the down position here. So this is the bottom of my thingy right here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Taking you?
Cookie. Yes, Cookie's here.
All right.
So. Okay, does everyone understand here? Everyone understand? It's starting at the bottom where my graph would be. Okay, so now, if it's at the bottom, where does it go next? Up. So now my up would be considered to where here?
3.
It would go up to 3,
House 4.
and then it goes up to
5.
5, which is right here,
Back down to 3, right?
and then back down to 3. Right here, it's back down to 3. Then it goes down to 1. Then it goes
0.
up to 3, right? Up to 3, goes back up to 3. And at pi, it's at 5. And at pi, 7 pi over 6, 3. And at 4 pi over 3, back down to 1. So let's look. So now right here, I'm going to go ahead and trace it out. So if you notice, the wave is wrapping around the 3. The 3 is my vertical shift. So it wraps around, kind of like it used to wrap around the x-axis, but now it's wrapping around the 3. So we moved the whole thing up. We shifted the whole thing up. Yes?
So it's kind of like a scatter plot, just a little tiny piece of it.
Not really, no. No. So, other questions?
Wait, how do you know how to put it?
Okay, cosine usually starts at 1, right? And we multiply times the amplitude, right? So if it's a negative cosine, it would start at the down position. If it's a positive, it would start at the all the way up, right?
I think so.
No?
No.
Okay. So a normal cosine. So a normal cosine on a line. So here's my graph. So normal cosine starts here and goes down. A negative cosine would start here and go like that. This one is a negative cosine. This one's a positive cosine, right? But because this is a negative cosine with a vertical shift, so it's starting in the down position, right? It's a negative cosine. So this is the down position now because of where it needs to start. Well, I have the amplitude, which tells me how high and how low, but this is a vertical shift. So that means the whole thing moved up 3 units, but now from there with my amplitude, it goes up 2 from there and down 2 from there.
Oh. Yeah, I got it.
Kinda. And sine would start off at 0, right there. So a positive sign goes up first, and then a negative sign would go down first. Yes?
Okay, so you're saying that if the amplitude is like, say, -8, right? You go all the way down past the x
Yeah.
axis.
So if I have the same thing, if the amplitude was -8, it would go down 8 from here.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right down here, right? So it would be down at -5. So it'd be starting at -5. But then from here, it would go up 8. It would go up 8 from here. So it's going to go up to 11. So it would start way down here and it'd go way up. So yes, it would look like it.
What if the amplitude was positive? Would it still go down?
No, if the amplitude was positive, I would start here. For this one right here. So if the amplitude was positive, I would start here and it'd go this way. So it would look like this. Okay? Kinda? Yeah. Other questions? All right, yes.
Where'd you get the 5 from?
Where'd I get the what?
5.
5. This 5?
Yes.
This one right here. Okay, so now my vertical shift is 3, right? I go up 3. My amplitude is what?
2.
2, right? So it's 2. So it's going to go up 2 and down 2 from this number. So it goes up 2 to 5, and it goes down 2 to 1.
Okay.
All right? And the negative just tells me which direction it starts off. If it starts down or if it starts up. If it's positive, it starts up. If it's negative, it starts down. Okay, so here's another one, but they did forward and backwards, but it looks just like ours. Okay, it goes from negative, or it goes from 1 up to 5 like this, and it's wrapping around y equals 3. Okay, so let's see. Different method of doing the same thing. All right, let's try this one now. This one has everything. But now, for the sake of, I'm going to change this to 1.
Over 1 period.
1 period. Okay, let's see if you wrote down the steps. So I'm hoping everyone at least write down the steps because I'm trying to make sure I'm not boring you to death and I don't have too many people sleeping in this class right now. So if they are, they might get an elbow. Right now, they might. Now it's time to elbow the person next to you if they're asleep. Give them a quick nudge. Wow, she is out. She's like drooling on her desk. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead with this. So now, starting off with, I'm going to do what? Period. Is going to be 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, right? Very good. Next thing. Amplitude. Amp is what?
2.
All right, so now, do I have to factor on this one?
Yes.
Yes, let's factor it. So factor it. So it's going to be sine of 4 quantity x plus pi over, very good, pi over 4. Because I'm dividing each of these terms right here by 4. Divide this by 4, it's just x. Divide this by 4, I get pi over 4. Okay, so what's the next thing I'm missing?
Vertical shift.
Vs.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if it's negative on the vertical shift, it's like it's going down.
Yeah, it's going to move the whole thing down. So remember when I did my dotted line?
Oh yeah, my bad.
My dotted line is going to be my vertical shift.
I'm thinking of the amplitude.
Oh, okay, so we have -1. So my vertical shift is -1. So that only has to deal with my graph. So my amplitude and my vertical shift only has to do with my y values and how high and low it's to go. It doesn't have anything to do with my parts. So let's do this with my parts over one period. So 0, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1. So times pi over 2. So times pi over 2. What else do I have to do? Minus pi over 4. Yes? Okay, so now it's time to do the math. So 0 times pi over 2. 0. So this is? Very good. Negative pi over 4. So quarter times pi over 2. Pi over 8, right? Pi over 8 minus pi over 4, which is going to give me 4 pi minus 8 pi over. So I get negative 4 pi over, which gives me a negative pi over. There we go. So this way works every single time, right? Okay, so now next piece. Pi over 4 minus pi over 4, which gives me 0. Okay. All right, so 3/4 times pi over 2. 3 pi over 8, very good, minus pi over 4, 12 pi, 8 pi over, which is 4 pi over 32, which reduces down to pi over 8. Next one. Pi over 2 minus pi over 4, which is 4 pi minus 2 pi over 8, which is 2 pi over 8, reduces to pi over 4. Yes?
Like the test just be on that only.
You want to test just over this?
It's on the set.
Just on this stuff.
Yeah.
I can, no, seriously, I can give you guys a test next week if you guys want.
Yes.
Just section 1 and section 2.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That's perfect. So
Okay, all right. So, all right, let's go through and I'm going to graph this next piece.
Just a little bit too quick.
Okay, so when you're watching the playback, just, hit pause when you.
What is the live feed?
Not really a live stream, but it's I'm still recording it.
Oh wow.
I haven't figured out how to do the live stream if I'm just pulling it from the computer. Because they tried to do it through a camera, and I'm not sure how to do that.
If you do a live stream, don't pull the PewDiePie.
Whatever that is. Anyway, all right, so my graph. Okay. Here's my graph, right? So where do I start this when I'm graphing?
Bottom. -1.
-1, because that's my vertical shift, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to start this at -1.
Sine.
And so I'm going to draw a dotted line for the -1. All right, so where's my start?
The 0 or the -1. Is it sine? Right.
Let's see. My start point was -pi/4. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to start putting those in. This is -pi/4. The next one's going to be -pi/8. 0. What's the next one? And last one is pi/4. So, kind of stretched out my graph here on this one. All right, so let's take a look then. I don't like that. I'm gonna fix this piece. Yeah. All right, what was my amplitude?
2.
It was 2. So from my -1, it's going to go up 2, so it's going up to 1, and it's going down to -3. Yes? Hopefully. All right, so my function was what? Sine or cosine? Sine. Sine always starts at the 0. But now this 0 has a vertical shift, so it's not going to start at 0, it's starting at -1. So it's starting at -1 here. So at -1, so right here, here's my start. Is the sign positive or negative?
Positive.
It's positive. What is my amplitude?
2.
Positive 2, right? My amplitude is positive 2, so that means my sign is positive. So that means that sine has to start going which way?
Up.
It goes up, so it goes up to,
1.
Zero.
goes down to -1,
Down to -3.
down to -3,
Back up to
back up to -1. So I kind of stretched out my graph here. Ah, there.
What? I like it.
Nah, yeah, it's kind of weak. That's probably one of my worst graphs so far. I'm sorry. So, anyway. Do you want to redo? Let's see if I can actually do it real quick. I got this. I know I can do it.
skip 0.
Ah! I skipped 0.
Down to -3.
There we go. A little bit better. Working on it. All right. There we go. All right. So questions, concerns, complaints.
That looks way better.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Vincent Van Gogh.
All right. So go ahead, Emmanuel.
What?
Close it out.
What?
What do you say? Closing.
Like and subscribe. Follow me at. You don't have anything.
I'm confused.
Master Caution.
Follow.
Trig.
subscribe.
Yeah.
Comment down
Like,
below.
follow, subscribe, comment
And
down
you can
below.
Get this
Have a
to
good
50
day.
million likes, and I'll do a giveaway. Face reveal.
Face reveal. All right. Okay. All right.
At the Ghost Pepper channel.